Hi friends, welcome to another video. As you can see, we've officially entered Christmas season, so here I am in my festive sweater beside my Christmas tree. Let's talk about the books that I read in November. I ended up reading 13 books in total in November, which is not too shabby. I had 8 books on my TBR list. I ended up reading 5 of the ones on that TBR list, plus 8 additional ones. Firstly, let's go through my November TBR and see how well I did. So there was 3 books on my TBR that I didn't end up getting to in the month of November. First was The Waves by Virginia Woolf. I tried, I really tried, and I picked this book up once and then immediately noped it and put it back on my pile. So I think I'm just like solidly gonna DNF this. I gave it the old college try, but it's just like not a book for me. Next is The Wise Man's Fear. I'm definitely going to read this. I've added it to my December TBR. It is very thick and I just didn't get around to reading it in the month of November. Finally, Cemetery Boys. I finished this book, I just didn't finish it by November 30th, so it's gonna go on my December wrap-up video. So good, by the way, absolutely loved it. Okay, next the books on my TBR that I actually did read. Firstly, we have Serpent and Dove and Blood and Honey by Shelby Mahurin. Wow, this was an event. This book I honestly do enjoy. My second read around, I ended up giving it 3.5, so I lowered it by 0.5 of a star, whereas the sequel was just not a book for me. Honestly, it was kind of a dumpster fire of chaos. I ended up rating it 2 stars, and I actually filmed a video talking about why this was so much worse than this book, so if you want to watch that video, I will link it in the description below. Next was Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. Finally I finished this. Oh my god, it took me like over a year to read this, which is ridiculous. I know, but I finished it. I like put it out into the universe and then actualized it, so yay for me. I'm actually gonna like pat myself on the back for that because I really struggled to get through this. I ended up rating it 3 out of 5 stars. It was okay. I liked A Tale of Two Cities more, but after I finished it, I rewarded myself by getting to watch the BBC mini-series of Great Expectations, which was really fun to watch, so that was enjoyable. I might go watch a couple more movies based on the Great Expectations just because I really like film versions of these stories. Next was Educated by Tara Westover. This book actually really surprised me in the end in a good way. It started off not that strongly for me. I thought the writing was a little bit too purple and it seemed like she was taking a bit too many liberties with her story. It just didn't feel like it was grounded in enough truth for me to really believe what was happening. But then it does pick up definitely after like the first third of the book, and the second and third parts were really captivating. I couldn't put this book down and I just really wanted to find out what happened with her story. I will give a warning that like there's a lot of physical injury in this, like her siblings and even her dad just like there's no such concept as workplace safety in their world apparently, so they just have all of these stupid preventable accidents because they just believe that God will take care of them. And it's painful to read about. It is pretty graphic, so I'd say that kind of thing geeks you out. Maybe avoid this. But I ended up really enjoying it. I will say I still like The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls better, but this was a really entertaining read. Ended up rating it 4 stars. Finally, off my TBR list was The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak. Oh my god, this book, it made me cry so much. Like, real hard. It was not a cute look. This was amazing. I'm so glad I decided to read this. I was avoiding it for so long and I honestly don't know why. I think it was probably because I knew it was about World War II and I knew it was going to be depressing and sad, and I just like had to be in that right mind space to take on that kind of emotion. Thankfully I did, and I love this so much. I'm definitely going to reread it at some point. 5 stars obviously, but it was just so good. Loved it. Okay, now let's talk about the books that weren't on my TBR but I still ended up reading. First on the list is The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. I ended up picking this book up back in October after first I had watched The Haunting of Bly Manor, which I absolutely loved. It made me cry so hard. So I decided that I should probably watch The Haunting of Hill House. I started the first episode and then I was like, there's a book about this. So I thought I would read the book first and then finish watching the TV show. I will say there are a lot of differences between the book and the TV show. Like if you like this show, you might not like the book and vice versa. I think both for what they were trying to do, they pulled it off really, really well. I rated the book 4 stars and honestly it's very creepy, it's very atmospheric. There's a lot of the unreliable narrator happening, so you kind of can't really tell what's happening, if it's all in her head, if the haunting is because of the house or because of the main character. It's just very like wibbly wobbly, confusing, but I really, really enjoyed it. I love that kind of psychological thriller, and I would definitely highly recommend you read the book if you liked the TV show, but just be aware that they are very, very different. Actually, my favorite part of the TV show, aside from like all of the family members who were just beautiful, sweet gems, and I just want all the good things for them, like that cast of characters was so impeccable. But I love that the ending of the show was different than the book. So the last line of the book actually says, "And whatever walked there walked alone," and it's sort of ominous. You're supposed to think that Nellie died, but she didn't end up becoming a ghost and living in the house. At least that was my interpretation. It was just whatever was in the house was still there alone, and it had just like manipulated Nellie into killing herself. Whereas in the TV show, I think they did a really, really smart thing and twisted that around so that the final line is, "And whatever walked there walked together," or didn't walk alone. I can't remember exactly what the words are, but basically it's not alone, the whole family's together. And I really, really enjoyed that. I thought it was super well done and a great twist on the book. The next book I read was The Beautiful by Renee Ahdieh. I ended up giving this 3 stars. I know a lot of people really, really liked this, and I think the problem was that I listened to the audiobook and maybe I shouldn't have done that because I just found it kind of boring / annoying. Specifically the villain character's voice that the audiobook narrator does. It like keeps changing paces and like tones of voice from like raspy to normal, and it was just like very grating on the senses to listen to that. And it was also incredibly slow, so every time that voice came on I had to like 2 times the speed just so it was the same tempo as the rest of the book, and that was annoying. So I feel like maybe I would have liked it more if I had just read the physical book, but as it stands I'm not going to continue with the series because I just really wasn't that invested in the characters. It was good while I was reading it, but I'm like, I'm done with that story. I don't need any more of it. The next book I read was Bear Town by Friedrich Bachmann, and like, what a sweet, sad, beautiful story this was. Everything that I've read so far by him is just so wonderful, and it's just like a love story to humanity, and it's just, I think he's becoming one of my favorite authors. I just really, really love the way he writes. So the story of Bear Town is, it's like a hockey town in Sweden, and one of the star players of the hockey team sexually assaults a girl in the town, and so it's kind of everybody coming to terms with whose side are they gonna take, what's right, what's wrong. Nothing's really black or white because you get to see literally every single person's perspective, and so you love all of them, so you understand why they're doing awful things but you can't forgive it, and it's just like your emotions get tied up exactly the same way it would if a loved one of yours did something horrendous, where it's just like, I love you but I can't forgive you. And so it's just all of these complicated emotions and feelings, and it was just done so well where like I wanted to scream, cry, but there's also these like moments of beautiful joy and happiness and family and love. So it's a story about everything, and it was just beautiful and I loved it a lot. The next book I read was If I Was Your Girl by Meredith Russo. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I really, really liked this story a lot. The reason I gave it 4 stars instead of 5 is just because there were certain plot points that I wasn't totally on board with. Like, it's set in a very Southern American kind of town. So there's lots of like promposals and people going mudding and just doing very like yeehaw old South things. It's just not really my vibe and not something that I enjoy reading about or would ever actively go and pick up. So I kind of had to like set that aside because the main character, Amanda herself, was just like so great to read about. Her story was so beautiful and painful and all of the things. So basically the premise of the story is that a girl moves to a new town and she has to keep a secret from everybody that is she's actually trans. So she's trying to like start a new life in this new place while keeping this secret, and she's falling for a guy, she's making friends, she's trying to deal with her relationship with her dad, while all the while she's having this internal struggle about like, can I show people who I really am? Will they accept me? This was just a really, really great book to read if you want the inside look at the trans perspective, and it's also an own voices story. So the author, Meredith Russo, is also trans. Yeah, I liked it a lot. I listened to the audiobook and it's also super, super quick. So if you're just looking for something like really fast you can listen to get your book count number up, totally check this one out. The next book I read was Pet Sematary by Stephen King. This was my first like full-length Stephen King book that I've ever read, and like didn't love it. Wasn't my favorite. I was actually expecting to like it a whole lot more than I did just because he's such a huge, popular, well-known author. But yeah, I think it's just because it was written so long ago, like in the 80s, that it just felt very dated to me. So Stephen King describes this book as his scariest work that he thinks he's ever written. So I was just like expecting it to really, really freak me out. But it was more just a little bit creepy. Nothing really intense happens until the very end of the book. So it was more just like a character study of characters and relationships. But the thing is that I just wasn't that invested in any of the characters, so it was just a little boring. It also felt a little like cultural appropriation-y in that there's a lot of Micmac burial grounds and old stories that are being mentioned in the book, but we don't really have any Micmac characters talking about it. It's just a bunch of like old white dudes. So ultimately I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was The Thief by Megan Whalen Turner. I was just randomly looking for an audiobook to listen to and this popped up, and it was such a pleasant surprise. Like I wasn't expecting a whole lot with it, but I like inhaled it in like 1 or 2 days. Just really, really entertaining. It's high fantasy. So he's supposed to be like the best thief there is, and he's in jail. So the book starts off with this mage coming to get him and taking him on this journey to go and steal something valuable. And honestly, like not a lot happens. Some stuff gets stolen. It's mostly like a journey story. But for some reason I just really, really liked it a lot, and I was just in the mood for it, and it just did the job. I did try to read the sequel, The Queen of Atolia, like right after, but unfortunately I couldn't get into it, which I was actually really disappointed about because I've heard that The Queen of Atolia is like even better than this first one. But the book started off with, this is a spoiler alert by the way, the book started off with him getting caught and his hand getting cut off for being a thief. And I really don't like reading about body mutilations and stuff unless I'm like mentally prepared for it. So if it comes and it's a surprise to me, it just like just makes me really uncomfortable. So that happened and I was just like too depressed that his hand got cut off because I like the character so much, and I was just like, I don't want to read about somebody I like being in pain. And I just couldn't take it, so I decided to DNF it. Maybe I'll come back to it again in the future now that I know it happens and I'm mentally prepared for it. But for now, I'm just like, I'm not ready. The next book I read was Unspoken by Sarah Reese Brennan, which was another unexpected surprise in that I freaking loved this so much. Like, oh my god, I'm still like quaking at how freaking good it was. I would describe it as like if you imagine a spectrum where on one end is Wuthering Heights and on the other end is the Angus Thongs and Full Frontal Snogging series. Like, I know, but just imagine that and then put this book right in the middle. That's how I felt, because it has this like, it's like British schoolgirls and they are cracking jokes and getting into shenanigans and being silly and goofy, but not in like a annoying way, just in like a insanely funny way. So you have that on one end, but then you have this like star-crossed lovers, painful, horrible situation on the other of like a will they, won't they can't for XYZ reason romance. And there's also this backdrop of this small English village in the Cotswolds and this old manor with a mysterious family that's lived there forever, and a murder happens, so there's a murder mystery element, and there's like, it's so dark and atmospheric, and then it'll flip and like crack a joke that'll make me like bust my gut laughing. So it was just so good. I really, really liked it. Definitely gonna continue with the series at some point because wow, so good. Finally, I read Bunny by Mona Awad, which I know has been making the rounds on BookTube a little bit, and so I had wanted to check it out in October during spooky season, but I just didn't get around to it, so I ended up reading it in November, and I rated it 4 stars. So the thing is, everybody's reviews of this book were like, the weirdest thing I've ever read. What the hell did I just read? So I like went into the book with that mindset where I was like, it's gonna be so freaky and wackadoo. I'm not even gonna know what's happening. And it like wasn't that weird. I don't know, like just to me I was like, yeah, it's weird, but like it's okay, it's just bunnies. So like, I don't know, I liked it. It was weird, but I enjoyed it. It was just a fun read. I know that's weird to say because of the content of the book, but I just like had a fun time reading it. It was entertaining. It was like, there was a little bit of mindfuckery, a lot of weird stuff happening, a lot of cultish vibes and animal sacrifice and stuff. So like, be forewarned if that's not your jam. But I really liked it a lot. Okay, now moving on to December. I don't have a long December TBR at this point, so I'm just gonna include it at the end of this video because it's pretty short. So far, the only books that I have definitely planned to read this month are firstly The Name of the Wind. I'll probably start this right after I finish the book I'm currently reading. And then while I was reading Blood and Honey, the whole time I was like, you know what this character reminds me of, but just like at a level 1 instead of a level 10, is Selena/Aelin from the Throne of Glass series, because it's like a girl with a secret past and she's actually like a princess and she is badass and on the run and, you know, trying to get her man. Is she doing that? I don't know. That's what I said, so we'll stick with it. Anyways, the whole time I was reading that book, I was like, you know what I just really want to read is a good book. I just want, finally, some good fucking food. So I'm gonna read this, probably the whole series, but I'll start with this one. The last time I read this book was 2 years ago, so we're kind of due for a reread now anyways, even though I've read this multiple times. But it's just one of my favorite series of all time, and I just, every couple years or so, I like to go through and reread it all. So yes, this baby's happening. I don't know what words are coming out of my mouth right now, but like, it's a vibe. Let's just go with it. Moving on. Finally, the third book that I definitely plan to read this month is The City of Glass by Cassandra Clare, which is the third book in the Mortal Instruments series. I am very, very slowly rereading this series now to see, firstly, see how it holds up since the last time I read it was like in high school. And then secondly, I plan to read the entire series so that I am prepared for the Lady Midnight, I can't remember what the name of that series is, Dark Artifices? I think that's the name of the series. So I tried to read it once a couple years ago and it kept referencing things that happened in the final book of the Mortal Instruments, which I've never read. So I was like, okay, I can't read this until I finish the Mortal Instruments series. So now I'm doing that so I can read that book. Does that make sense? Yes. So I'm gonna read City of Glass and then eventually the rest of them as well. I'm not like super looking forward to it because I DNF'd at book 4 or 5 the first time I read this series, because I just like, I really feel like Cassandra Clare should have stopped at City of Glass. Like she should have just made it a 3-book series, but she kept going. I don't know why, but she did. So I'm finally gonna finish it. We'll see how it goes. Maybe I'll like it more this time around. I don't know, I'm not hopeful, but it would be nice if I liked it more. I guess we'll see, we'll find out. I'll keep you posted. Okay, and that is the end of my November wrap up and December TBR. Thank you guys so much for watching. Happy start of the holiday season. I hope you are having a lovely time despite the COVID situation. I'm for sure I'm feeling a little bit lonely because I don't get to see my family this year. But you know, it is what it is. We gotta keep people safe. So hope you guys are doing well. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.